All right, everybody. Welcome back to Gridiron Gang, a Detroit News Lions podcast. Today is Thursday, March 5th, 2026, and we've got a jam-packed episode for you guys today. We are going to discuss David Montgomery's trade to the Houston Texans, prospects that caught our eye at the NFL Combine, go over our most recent Detroit News mock draft, and so much more. But before we get to all that, I'm Nolan Bianchi. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Richard Silva. Rich, I would ask how you're doing today. You're a little under the weather after I implored you to bring a coat to the NFL Combine last week, advice that you did not heed. And we are here with the expected result, which is you being sick. This will probably last about 3-4 weeks because you won't take any further preventative measures. But how are you feeling?
I'm feeling better. It's like day 4 of me being sick, and honestly, I feel almost close to 100%. But I feel like this happens a lot of times when I get sick, where I just can't get over the last little hurdle. But I'm feeling better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah, it usually takes him about 2-3 weeks, which is why I try to tell him to put the jacket on so he doesn't get sick, because he's kind of a super spreader in a lot of ways.
No.
Yes. You get everybody else sick, and then you say, well, somebody else got me sick. And it's like, yeah, but you could have stopped the spread, bro. Anyways,
fair enough.
We're moving on here very quickly. If you haven't done so already, please do us a favor. Rate the podcast, review it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. YouTube, that would be huge. If you want to go on YouTube, check out the Detroit News page there. Watch our podcast there. That'd be a lot of fun. We also have video podcasts at DetroitNews.com. It'll pop up at the top of your page on most Lions stories. So go check that out. And thanks for listening. Some significant news over the last couple of days. The Lions getting their affairs in order before the start of NFL free agency next week. Comes in 2 forms. One with a trade, and then the other one with the release of a player who spent 7 years with the organization. The trade was David Montgomery, running back to the Houston Texans, for a 2026 4th rounder, a 2027 7th rounder, and interior offensive lineman Juice Scruggs. Now, this was something that we kind of talked about last week on the episode after we had heard from Brad Holmes. He basically said at the Combine, he was asked at the end of the year, what is David Montgomery's future in Detroit? Because his production took a step back, his usage took a step back. And while he didn't make that big of a deal about it all the time, he definitely had some cryptic Instagram posts from time to time. And it was publicly known that there was a little bit of discontent with his role this season. And Brad Holmes said at the end of the year, a player has to be here. We'll have conversations with David, and basically reiterated as much when we talked to him at the Combine last week. Now, we had wondered if the hiring of offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, who despite, maybe not the best numbers in Arizona, did manage to put up some pretty good rushing offenses over his time. Maybe that could be enough to entice David Montgomery to come back, to make him believe that whatever the Lions will be doing on the ground next season features him in a big role. But apparently that was not in the cards, because less than a week later, or a couple days later, we've got ESPN's Jeremy Fowler tweeting that Montgomery would like to be traded. And David Montgomery disputes this online. And so what I find interesting in all of this is that it kind of sounds in a little bit of a way that, like, the Lions definitely publicly said, we want David Montgomery back, but clearly they didn't. Like, they could have easily just had him back because he was under contract. And I know I kind of ranted on this in last week's episode, but you didn't have to do anything. You could have told him to suck it up and get back in the locker room or whatever you wanted to do. But they ultimately decided to trade him. And if it was just for a 5th round pick, I don't know that would entice me to let go of a player that they clearly did not want to let go of. However, it sounds like that was the original trade that was in place for Montgomery, but then another team jumped it, that being from a couple reports that have been out there circling the news. So that is that. David Montgomery, fresh start in Houston, where he'll probably have a bigger opportunity ahead of him.
It's pretty remarkable what him and Gibbs did together for 3 seasons. Just to talk about that for a second before we get into how do we replace him and what this means for the big picture for the Lions. Yards from scrimmage, 8,185 over the last 3 years, combined the two of them. 82 total touchdowns over the last 3 years, which is insane. The Lions went 29-14 when both of those guys appeared in the game. They were 15-0 when both of those guys scored. They were undefeated when both of those guys scored. Of course, some of that is you get a big lead, you're going to give the ball to your running backs a lot, and easier to find the end zone that way. But just the success that those two found together for the last 3 years was really remarkable, and it is truly one of the best running back tandems we've seen in recent memory. I think as far back as I can remember in my lifetime, it is, I think, the most efficient, most productive, most leading to wins tandem. And the other one that jumps out to me is Kamara and Mark Ingram, which is obviously, like Dan Campbell has talked about, that was his vision for Gibbs and Montgomery. I think that worked, and then some. But to discuss how the Lions are going to replace Montgomery now, obviously there's two different ways they could do this. I think we both agree that they're not going to roll with who they have on the roster. Sione Vaki is in theory next man up, but the reality with Sione Vaki is we kind of always knew it was going to take a while to develop, given that he played a safety majority of the time in college. But he's only had 7 carries through his first 2 seasons, and like I just don't think a team that is going to try to make the playoffs and win the Super Bowl next year should put 150 carries on a guy that has 6 carries in his career up to this point. So I think we both agree that they're going to go out and get somebody, draft or free agency. I think I tend to lean more towards draft, day 2, probably starting round 4 and beyond into day 3 after that. I think that would be the best option for a couple reasons. One being, any free agent that you sign that's going to be close to what David Montgomery brought you, whether that's Tyler Algier or Rico Dowdle or anybody in that tier of running back, you're kind of not saving any money in the process. You're paying them similar to what you paid Montgomery. Maybe you'd be getting a little bit younger, but you're already taking on some dead cap by trading Montgomery. And then you're going to get a guy that you're going to pay him essentially the same thing. And that was kind of the whole hang up this last time, where like you're overpaying for a guy that's going to get you 150 carries. That's why I think draft makes the most sense. It appears like a deep running back class that you'd be able to find a guy in the mid rounds that can get you 150 carries to complement Gibbs next year. That's, in my opinion, the best way to go.
Yeah, now you have that extra 4th round pick in your pocket, which you could use to trade up. I think if we know anything from Brad Holmes over the last couple of years of him running the draft, I think we should say that is definitely on the table, because they have a lot of picks on day 3. Just 2 picks before the end of day 2. But how many is it on day 3? Do you have that off the top of your head?
800.
800 picks?
Yeah, I'm just messing around. I know they have. It's a little bit in flux because the comp picks haven't been awarded yet. Like there might be another one coming, or it might be a day 2 pick. Like we'll see. But yes, it is like I think they have like at least 4 on day 3. It's a good bit, and I would not expect them to make all of those picks. No, given how Brad Holmes has operated the first 5 drafts he's been here.
Yeah, and I just to kind of put a bow on that aspect of things, I think really like, again, the value you're going to get back if this is a tough move to make for Detroit. This is all of a sudden the getting the 4th and the 7th. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but in my brain, the difference between a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick is absolutely huge. I don't think that is actually true. But I do think that this made a lot of football sense. Like it was just a tidy piece of business for Brad Holmes to get this done, to be able to get a guy who in Drew Scruggs, who might not be have the best resume based on his last couple of seasons, but is a former 2nd round pick. And I think, you get him in here, still has a little bit of upside. If you can get him in the right development track, he's on the last year of his rookie deal, so he's cheap. All those things. And so even if you had question marks about this, I think from a business perspective, I think it was sound process by the Lions and general manager Brad Holmes.
I mean, even if Scruggs, he doesn't even have to start to make it worth it. If he makes the roster and is the first man up at all 3 interior spots, I know Coyote Awashika didn't play center, but he's in essence Coyote Awashika, like your swing man at both guard spots. I think that's the win. Like getting a guy like that for a soon-to-be 29-year-old running back, plus the draft picks that you got for him, and I know the 7th matters, but it's the 7th, whatever. But to get a 4th and the player, I think that's as much value as you could have squeezed out of David Montgomery. And I think while it sucks, the Lions are undoubtedly worse today than they were 3 days ago or whenever the trade happened. Like, they are a worse team without David Montgomery. But if you had to make the deal, I put quotation marks around had, but if David Montgomery wanted out and you granted that wish, I think this was probably as good as you were going to get from a value perspective. And also, as much as it stinks to lose him, I have to believe that they are feeling some level of relief moving off of his cap hits this year and next year, which is 6 million and 9 million.
Yeah. And from a fan perspective, like I get why this is really hard because I watched Jamal Williams and the impact that he had on this locker room in that 2021, 2022 seasons. And at the time when they kind of let him walk to sign Montgomery, there was a sentiment that you just let a little bit of the culture walk out the door. And I think that there's a similar kind of feeling among the fan base that is happening, as well as also just players that fans have grown attached to. And I've talked about this before, but like you're going to look back on this era of Lions football and be like blown away by how many good players existed on this football team. And
remember when David Montgomery ran over, was it Witherspoon? Who did he truck against the Seahawks?
Yeah,
and ran for 30 more yards.
Yeah. And just the connection that he had with Gibbs and the really bringing like the running game to the forefront of this Lions team and made it its identity. Like if you watch Lions football up until Dan Campbell got here, they just didn't run the ball. Like I quote unquote came online in like 2001, 2002. That's when I started like acknowledging and remembering football. I think they had a couple pretty good backs in those early years. Names are escaping me off the top of my head. I was going to say Kevin James, Kevin Stewart, I believe it was. Guys like that. Let me look this up. Make sure.
They had the 100-yard rusher drought, right, forever, and Terrion Johnson eventually broke it. But it was better than me. How many games in a row? How many years in a row was it?
I don't know. Hold on. I gotta figure out this running back named Stewart that is escaping me, and I feel really embarrassed about.
From
James Stewart. James Stewart. That was it. And like the love that Javid Best still has in this town because he hit a couple big runs and showed some potential. Like it tells you where this run game was at before Dan Campbell got here. And at a certain point, it just kind of became like part of it was their identity. It was almost their entire identity. It was this ground and pound. We're going to smash mouth football our way to a victory every single week. And they could hit a lot of the high flying passing game stuff, a lot of excellent receivers, but that was their identity, was being able to take control of the game and basically put their foot on the team on the opposition's throat with those two running backs and just put the floor down. And then you add obviously the additional connection to the fan base that he had with Jahmyr Gibbs and the whole Sonic and Knuckles nickname, and just the idea that not only do they have one good running back, but they have two good running backs, and these guys appear to love each other, and they have cool nicknames, all these things. I think
and they complemented each other so well.
Yeah, they complemented each other so well. And so I also do recognize that while this is, from a business perspective, again, a nice piece of work by Brad Holmes, it does still hurt. And even if you can think about that from a fan perspective, I understand that hurts as well.
I mean, I remember, I forget what game it was. They ran out of the tunnel together and they got announced as starters together and like stood back to back. Like I've never seen like people do that before. Like, get announced and run out of the starting tunnel together. Maybe this is a little bit dramatic, and I talked to you about it yesterday. I feel like, or maybe 2 days ago, whenever I was talking to you, it felt moving off of Montgomery kind of felt a little like an inflection point in the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes regime. And what I mean by that is, yes, they've replaced Jamal Williams before. Like when they were doing that, like it still felt like they were like climbing. And maybe I'm just saying that in hindsight because Montgomery was an upgrade over Williams, with the benefit of hindsight. But it felt like they were still climbing when they did that. And this roster, although it didn't win a Super Bowl, it climbed to as close as you could get, the NFC Championship game, and then 15-2. And I know that you didn't get the playoff success you wanted in 2024, but both of those 2 years, that roster was 100% good enough to win the Super Bowl and came close, at least one of them. And then now it feels like after the 9-8 year, it almost is like a reset, like phase 2 of Holmes and Campbell together. felt like it started for me when you move off of Montgomery. And we'll see what they do the rest of the offseason. Maybe that's really the only notable change. But I mean, Alex Anzalone's a free agent. He's been here since 2021. Like Graham Glasgow, who we're going to talk about in a second, got released. And I know that was the right move. Like he had to get released. But you're letting some of the guys that got you so close, you're letting some of them out the door. And it just feels like it's a new, I don't want to say new era because it's not, but a new step in this regime.
No, but I agree with you. And, you know, teams have gone through this. Like I remember the Bills went through this a couple years ago where they were kind of knocking on the door and they got closer more frequently, or I wouldn't say closer, but they're closer. They made a couple different AFC championship games. Obviously the Lions only had one by the time that they kind of started to make a few of these moves, but the Bills did it. You know, they let go of a lot of guys that brought them there. And I think this all started with Ragnow retiring last offseason,
Yeah.
but maybe we didn't fully recognize because there was no like turnover in that regard. It was just the guy left.
It wasn't a choice that the team made.
Right, exactly. And so, you know, when you combine that with Skipper's retirement, and I know Taylor Decker's coming back, but Graham Glasgow got released, and it just feels like the fun and the love that was like around this team for the early stages of Dan Campbell's tenure here. Those players are starting to move on. And you know, not to counsel the people. Like I don't know if they need this, but like there will be good players that continue to roll in here that you will fall in love with all over again. But I also understand the sadness of losing the guys that they have. Like Graham Glasgow, he was part of some terrible regimes. Like during his time in Detroit, he was in a contract year and they were like, go out there and get in a guard rotation. And then he leaves and he comes back and his return is rewarded by going to the NFC Championship game with this downtrodden franchise. And same goes for Montgomery, who was not appreciated. Yeah, right. Montgomery was not really appreciated in Chicago. He comes here after not experiencing a whole lot of team success there, and instantly hits the ground running with a run to the NFC Championship. And one of the most memorable moments of that entire run for me was him talking in the locker room about how he was pumping gas. You know, I think it was right after they beat the Rams, and this might have been in the build-up to the Buccaneers game, but he was talking about how he's out there pumping gas, and this lady comes up to him, and she's like, "Are you David Montgomery?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for like this city and this team, and for me, like just watching you guys makes me feel a certain way." And that's the power of sports. Like those are the things that matter to me. And you know, like I think a lot of times we can get a little too caught up in the talk. Oh, well, it was a shrewd move, good business, yada yada yada. But at the same time, that's not how fans experience these players and watching them and things like that. So I just wanted to recognize that there is some sadness from a fan perspective that comes with these moves, even if it is from our perspective, good business.
Graham Glasgow's departure felt a little bit maybe less ceremonious because I think fans were rightfully upset with his play this past season. I mean the offensive line was an issue, the interior offensive line was an issue, center was an issue. He was put in the impossible spot of replacing Frank Ragnow, and obviously he could not live up to the expectations that Frank Ragnow had set for the last however many years it was, 8 that he played here, 9 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, if I can come to Graham Glasgow's defense for a moment, that guy for the last 2 years might have gotten the shortest straw or whatever the saying is of anybody on this roster. He came to the Lions. He re-came to the Lions 3 years ago, rejoined the Lions to play right guard, and he got to play right guard for one season. They made the NFC championship game, and he played okay. And then, I mean, so well that they extended him after that year, right? They give him the 3-year extension. And then they sign Kevin Zeitler, and they make Glasgow go play left guard, and he did it. He was the, being blunt, like he was the weakest link on that offensive line in 2024. He just was. I mean, everybody else on that line was good. Ragnow, Zeitler, Panay, Taylor, Decker. But he did it. And then even center this year, I know he fell short of expectations, like I said, but man, they bumped him to center. They didn't really give him a choice. They tried Tate out there. It didn't work for 3 days. And if it wasn't Graham, like I remember when Graham got tweaked, he tweaked something in training camp, and it looked like his knee. He got rolled up on. We didn't know what was going on, and we're like, man, if Graham is hurt, like I don't know who's going to play center for this team. It would like I really don't know who. And he ended up being fine, and he played I think 14 games this year. Started 14 games, didn't play 2 of the last 3 because they tried Kingsley, who's not here anymore. They tried him at center, but shoot, man, he was the best they had, and I know it doesn't mean much in professional sports, but man, he tried. Like he really did try, and he got put in situations that were unfair. I think that's the reality of it. And I'll cap this by saying it was absolutely the right move to move on from him to save the money that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I even think that they were probably ready to get, maybe move on from him last offseason before Ragnow retired. Like I remember talking to Dan Campbell at owners meetings, and there was a question of like, oh, where you guys at with Graham Glasgow? And the sentiment from Dan Campbell was, and I'm paraphrasing here, well, we know where Graham's at, and Graham is another year older, but he brings good versatility. So we'll see what happens. And I kind of read that as the writing on the wall, especially after they drafted Ratledge, of like, okay, assuming this Mahogany kid is ready to go, which that was probably a little bit of an over projection for him. It was definitely an over projection for him. I don't know if Graham really has a place around here. And then Frank retires, and all of a sudden, to your point, he becomes I don't want to call him the most important lineman on the team. I think that's a stretch, but like, if you had to play UDFA in there or something like that, or if you had to give up more capital to go and acquire a guy who might not be that much better than Graham Glasgow, whatever it may be, like, he stepped to the plate, and I do agree that he was put in a lot of unfortunate situations over his last 3 years here. Also a fan favorite, should point that out. Very funny guy, like
Yes.
One of our favorite people to talk to in the locker room, just because this deadpan humor that he always carried with him 24/7. He kind of had this like Eeyore-ish disposition, but he was actually very funny. And he would go all out for Halloween, and like fans loved him and stuff like that. So, there again, the person, I think Lions fans will miss him to some degree, but I do agree with your assessment of that.
And then if I could add one last thing just in his defense, he was the offensive coordinator for the John Morton-led offense, which we know now was not it was not Ben Johnson. I think maybe things would have been different if Ben Johnson was here and Graham got to play center for him. He did not. There's a reason that Morton got fired at the end of the year. It was not the greatest circumstances for Graham to play center regardless, and then to play center in an offense, in a first-year offense that led by a guy who got fired at the end of the year.
Well, and what was the game that lost Morton his play calling duties? It was Minnesota, because he couldn't adjust to the Brian Flores blitz. And if you'll recall, I don't want to say that Ben Johnson owned Brian Flores, but a combination of Ben Johnson and Frank Ragnow and Jared Goff, those three brains coming together, did have Brian Flores' number for the last 2 seasons coming into this one. So I agree with you that he was not exactly set up for success in that regard.
And then the very last thing for me on the Graham Glasgow thing. Also, just shout out to him. Was it 10 years in the league, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
And for the record, he has not announced his retirement. I saw he was streaming when the news actually came out, and he briefly spoke about it. I saw Jeremy Reisman, I think, tweet out the link to his to his live stream while it was going on, and I believe he said something to the effect of he's not sure if he's done yet. Like it would have to be a really good situation, a chance where he could go win. So I don't know if he's going to retire, but if this is it for Graham Glasgow, not so bad having a 10-year career or whatever it was, 11, as a former walk-on at Michigan. That guy, he was a not scholarship player at Michigan when he arrived, and he ended up having a decade-plus career in the NFL. Not too bad.
Yeah. All right, moving on here before we get to the break. We do have to tell you guys about a situation potentially involving Detroit Lions cornerback Terrion Arnold. We reported this last week at the Detroit News. If you have not seen it, please go read the full story. But we're going to go over some of the details right now. And I just want to start this off by saying that all of what we're about to say is alleged, and Terrion Arnold has not been arrested, charged, anything like that. However, his name did surface surface in a Florida court order from Judge J. Logan Murphy, who wrote a 7-page order granting the state of Florida's motion for pretrial detention against a man named Boakai Hilton, who was the 5th person arrested in connection with an armed robbery and kidnapping that occurred in Tampa on February 4th. The armed robbery and kidnapping are alleged by Judge Murphy to be a direct retaliation for a pair of thefts that occurred at Arnold's rental home in Largo, Florida, a few days prior. As I mentioned, as of March 4th, Arnold has not been arrested or charged in connection with the incident. He has also released a statement through his lawyer, which we will get to in just a second. And it should be also noted that these are just allegations. What is notable, however, is that they're coming from a judge, which makes the allegations, a little more notable than it would be if it was just, general hearsay or something like that. So what's alleged in these documents is that associates of Arnold carried out an armed robbery and kidnapping of 3 victims in hopes of getting property back that was stolen from Arnold's rental home, which, according to a police report filed by Arnold on February 3rd, was high-end bags, guns, jewelry, a cell phone, and $100,000 in cash. The allegations are that Hilton, as well as 4 other co-defendants, believed that the thefts were carried out by Arnold's private driver, a man with the last name Lopez. Judge Murphy said, quote, Arnold began to suspect that Lopez may have had a hand in the burglaries, and though they had reported the theft to Largo authorities, Arnold and his friends decided to take matters into their own hands, unquote. The order alleges that text messages show that a woman named Ariana Del Valle, who is said in the document to be Arnold's girlfriend, which his lawyer later denies, instructing a woman named Jasmine Randazzo to lure one of the 3 victims, who is friends with Lopez and had expressed romantic interest in Randazzo, to her apartment in Tampa. Del Valle allegedly told Randazzo to, quote, act as bait, unquote, with promises, quote, that Arnold and his friends would pay Randazzo for doing so, unquote, according to Judge Murphy's order. The order also alleges that text messages show Hilton planned the retaliation during a car ride with Arnold. The documents say victims 2 and 3 approached the house while Lopez waited in the car. Upon arrival, they were told that Randazzo, who had initially invited them over to the house, according to the documents, was not there. Thinking it was a joke, the 2 victims began searching the home. And as they opened a closet door in the bedroom, 2 of the co-defendants jumped out, both holding weapons, according to the documents. One allegedly was armed with an AR rifle, and the other had a semi-automatic firearm, according to a different pretrial detention hearing for a man named Lindell Hudson, who is one of the co-defendants in the case and is alleged to be one of the men who jumped out of the closet with the gun. After a while, Lopez grew suspicious and entered the house. It's alleged that he was immediately pistol whipped and taken to the bedroom with victims 2 and 3, where it's alleged that one of the defendants stuck the barrel of his firearm into his mouth, demanding the return of stolen property. The judge's order added, quote, text messages between Del Valle and Randazzo show that Del Valle has been instructed to hold the victims in the bedroom until, quote, Terrion and Boakai and Fredo, unquote, who is another friend, quote, arrive at the apartment complex, unquote. In total, the violent interaction is believed to have lasted 2 hours, according to documents. Now we have a statement from Terrion Arnold's attorney, which I will read to you promptly. This comes from Timothy Jansen from Jansen and Davis. I represent Mr. Terrion Arnold in connection with an incident that allegedly occurred on February 4, 2026 in Tampa, Florida, which resulted in the arrest of 5 individuals on serious felony charges. To be clear, Mr. Arnold had no involvement whatsoever in the activities that led to those arrests. He did not participate in, nor was he present for, any conduct related to the alleged offenses. There is no evidence in police reports, text messages, or witness statements that implicates Mr. Arnold in any way. In fact, after direct communication with the lead prosecutor, it has been confirmed that no charges have been filed against Mr. Arnold in connection with this matter. Recent media coverage has referenced an order issued by Circuit Judge J. Logan Murphy, which improperly suggests Mr. Arnold's involvement in the incident. That same order also incorrectly identifies Ms. Del Valle as Mr. Arnold's girlfriend. Both assertions are false, misleading, and entirely unsupported by the record. Mr. Arnold categorically denies these unfounded claims and maintains his complete innocence. He was not involved in the crimes allegedly committed on February 4th, 2026 in Tampa, Florida. We strongly urge members of the media to refrain from perpetuating inaccurate or speculative narratives. The facts are clear and they do not support any claim of wrongdoing by Mr. Arnold. So this is obviously an evolving situation. Without further details on the record, we don't want to further speculate on what comes next. But we just wanted to kind of address that, tell you what our reporting found at DetroitNews.com. Again, you can find that full article up at the website, and give you guys just kind of an idea of what's been going on in that world. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that and update you guys every step of the way.
I'll add one thing, and I think you did a good job laying out what we know. The only thing that I'll add, and not that you implied this at all, I just want to make it clear that the information that you reported that is in this court document is the judge's claims, and that is, it's not you. One, you're not saying it, and two, just because the judge is saying it does not mean that it is iron down fact. That it is the judge asserting something. Whether or not that is true, we do not know, and will, like you said, it's a developing situation. But I'll say that one, what the judge said, is not proven fact in a court of law yet, or maybe ever. And what Terrion's attorney said is not proven fact or in a court of law yet, or maybe ever. So that is the information coming from the judge and from Terrion's lawyer. You should not believe one side over the other because we don't know. We don't know what is to be true or not true yet.
Yeah. All right. We are going to stop for a quick ad from our sponsors.
For 44 years, Varsity Ford in Ann Arbor has been more than just a dealership. We're a family, proudly serving yours. As one of the top volume Ford dealers in the world, we're proof that when you treat people right, they come back, generation after generation. And now we make it easier than ever with complimentary pickup and delivery for both sales and service. So you can buy or service your Ford without leaving home. Varsity Ford, driven by family, built on tradition.
Segment 2 here at the Gridiron Gang podcast. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, do us a favor, rate, review, subscribe this episode so we can continue to grow and bring you guys more Gridiron Gang content as the offseason and season rolls on. Winners from the combine. There was, a lot of big winners from athletic testing. This is an interesting draft class in the sense that there is not a lot of blue chip talent at the top, which there's a couple different ways to kind of dive into how that impacts the draft. But I think for our purposes, going over some of the physical testing stuff, I think this is a draft where if you like a guy's traits, bet on it. There's a couple guys that we're going to name here. One of them being Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq, who I believe had the fastest 40 time by a tight end of 4.39 seconds since 2003, which is just absolutely absurd. 43.5-inch vertical jump, that's second amongst tight ends all time, and 11 feet 1 inch broad jump, that's also second among tight ends all time. So if you're a team who's sitting there at 15, you're like, man, all the blue chip players are gone. Those are the traits that you bet on, and so that's why I wanted to point that out in this case specifically, because we always obviously talk about the winners and losers from the physical testing at the combine, or just the winners, I guess we're going over today. But I think it's especially worth noting in a draft like this where the talent itself might be a little harder to find.
Speaking of traits, what Taylon Green did, the Arkansas quarterback, was pretty remarkable. He had the second fast. So of all quarterbacks at the combine, he was the fastest at 4.36 seconds. And it was the second fastest of all time, trailing only Michael Vick's 4.33. And then he set the all-time record for vertical jump at 43.5 inches and broad jump at 11 feet 2 inches. And this is a guy who is measured in at the combine at, if you give me 1 second here while it loads, he measured in at 6'6", 227. A 4.36 40-yard dash and a 43.5-inch vertical. Like, that is, like, he's 43.5 inches is how high, like, Michael Jordan jumped. And he's at quarterback. It's remarkable. He had his struggles. He was a 4-year starter in college.
It's almost my height.
Yeah. Just a foot and some change off from your height, I guess.
No, it's like 23. Wait, 67 inches tall, 67 minus. So that's like 24 inches.
Yeah, just about 2 feet.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, he was a 4-year starter in college, and listen, there's a reason why he's projected as a day 2 or perhaps more likely a day 3 pick, despite these testing numbers. It's because he was inconsistent in college. He was, but 4-year starter, 2-year starter in the SEC at Arkansas, did some good things there. It was actually interesting. So he was as fast as he was, and Mike Washington, the Arkansas running back, was the fastest 40-yard dash for all running backs at the combine. It's like, geez, like. I was going to say good luck to teams that have to face that. I guess teams already did face that, and they beat up on Arkansas a little bit in the SEC. But I would have to imagine it was a little bit of a headache trying to contain 2 of those guys.
Yeah, and the Lions, I think, are in prime position to potentially draft a quarterback this year. Like, again,
Especially on day 3.
Especially on day 3. Really, probably only on day 3. That's strictly the context that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and draft a quarterback with the 17th pick.
Ty Simpson.
Yeah. But like the Hendon Hooker experiment ended. I think they took a shot at trying to develop a high end backup. It didn't work. But I think that you kind of always want to be looking for that guy who can help you do that. And just as like a change up to Jared Goff, like Taylor Green is very exciting. But yeah, I think that this is this is the perfect draft of like guys in the later rounds. Like it's just all guys you've heard of in the 6th and 7th round for quarterbacks. It's Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, like all guys who were like probably top 5, top 10 in
projected
consideration
as first round picks this time last year.
Yeah, and for one reason or another, their seasons didn't go as planned, and now you got a whole bunch of quarterbacks who just had a down year waiting in the back end of the draft. Might be worth it to take. And like I said, they got a ton of day 3 capital, so would not surprise me at all to see the Lions take a chance on one of these guys.
The next guy I was going to bring up is someone I know that you have grown to like over the draft process. Here is Monroe Freeling, the tackle from Georgia. He had a 40-yard dash of 4.93 seconds. That was 3rd among OTs. His vertical jump, 33.5 inches, was 4th. Broad jump, 9 feet 7 inches. That was 3rd. This is a guy that hasn't started as long as some of the other tackles available. For instance, like the guy from Clemson, Blake Miller, has started 900 games in college, and I think Freeling has started like 15. So I think he has the what he did in that limited action was encouraging, and then the fact that he also has these physical traits, it's like, hang on now, like is he actually is there a chance?
And he does yoga.
And he does yoga.
Yeah, people love the yoga aspect of things. I mean, that is like a nice trait to have. So Monroe Freeling, his relative athletic score, which basically shout out to the man math bomb Kent Platt. He, if you're not familiar with relative athletic score, basically what it does is it takes a prospect's combine numbers, their measurables, their hand size, their arm length, their height, their weight. It takes all the drills that they recorded either at the combine or pro day, and it develops a relative athletic score from 0 to 10 that allows you to compare a prospect to every player who's ever played that position. So if you're the 10th, or if you get a 10, you're the most athletic player at that position ever. If you're a 0, you're the least athletic player at that position ever. Monroe Freeling, his relative athletic score after the combine, which he did not do any agility drills, 9.99. I can only imagine that those agility drills would have helped him given the yoga aspect of things, but 9.99 for Monroe Freeling, one of the most athletic tackles we've ever seen coming into the draft. And I know Brad Holmes talked last year against scouting for height, weight, and speed, but at the same time, all of his first 3 picks were like insane athletes. And so I know this is something that they're paying attention to. My only concern with Monroe Freeling is that he might have shot past the Lions. Like he was a fringe first rounder coming into this, this draft cycle. And I think even as recently as like 2-3 weeks ago was, if you would have predicted him to the Lions at 17. Some people might have said that's a little rich. I would say it was about 2 weeks ago when I said Monroe Freeling is the pick for the Lions at 17. I'm putting my flag in the ground right now. And now, I mean, again, it's post-combine. We're probably way overreacting to everything that happened, but I think he could go top 10. I'll reveal one of our mock draft picks. I had him going to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 9. And again, it might be a little reactionary, but he was building steam before this. And in a draft class like this, you just bet on those traits. You bet on all those things that we just talked about.
And anything can happen in a month or in 6 weeks, whenever the draft is here coming up, 2 months, closer to 2 months. But I think in terms of projections, I don't know so far this cycle if there's somebody else that's risen more than excuse me, slipping Monroe Freeling. He's, I mean, like you said, he's gone from fringe first rounder to like, shoot, man, could he go in the top 10?
Yeah. Who else you got?
I was going to bring up Parker Brasfold, the center.
Brailsford.
Yes, the center from Alabama. He had a 40-yard dash of 4.95 seconds. I think anytime an offensive lineman breaks 5 seconds or goes under 5 seconds for the 40-yard dash, it's a good time. His was 4th among the interior offensive linemen there. His vertical jump was 3rd. His broad jump was 1st. And I will say, so the 40-yard dash was 4th, but his 10-yard split was 1.7 seconds, and that's the first 10 yards of the 40-yard dash, and that was 1st amongst offensive linemen. First in broad jump, first in 10-yard split. Not that a player, especially a center, is ever going to be asked to, okay, set your 2 feet and jump forward from a standing position as far as you can. He's never going to get asked to that in a game, but I think the drills are designed to measure athleticism. And with a 10-yard split as good as his was, and the jumping measurements as well, I think he showed good explosion, and which obviously is required to succeed at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then I think moving to the defense, there was 3 guys. One guy that almost assuredly is not going to be available for the Lions at 17.
I never know. Positional value, buddy. Don't ever.
Talking about highest risers. I think Sonny Styles is also up there for highest risers. He was first in the 40-yard dash amongst linebackers, vertical jump, broad jump. He was really good.
43.5-inch vertical jump.
Right. Him and Taylor Green.
Just insane.
Just Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And then Malachi Lawrence, who's like a mid-round, maybe closer to back end of the 3rd round, defensive end from UCF. He was good. He was top 3 in the 40, in the vertical, and the broad jump. And of course, when I say top 3, I mean amongst his position. And then Charles Demings was an FCS corner that I was not familiar with, that he tested pretty well at the combine, and was somebody that I guess just caught my eye and was like, okay, I'm put a little star next to his name and revisit him at some point.
I like it. You and I did our second mock draft for the Detroit News yesterday. I do feel like coming out of the combine, shook some stuff up a little bit. You can't see it for audio only, but I just mimed some shaking some things. So that's good. That's good. Little, and it's so interesting because like this time of year, this is where everything starts to changing, and then I would say over the next 2 months or month and a half, whatever it is. Like half of it will go back to the way it was and half of it will stay. And I think that's like the challenging part is the Monroe Freeling stock going to stay? Because it totally could. There's a world where he's the first offensive tackle taken. Like I think the guys at the top of the draft have been there for a while and kind of seems like they will probably stay there. But I've seen Spencer Fano fall a little bit as of late. Maui Noah is still kind of in that top echelon of players, but I was reading his prospect profile and comparing it to Penei Sewell's yesterday, and the Lions got Penei Sewell at 7. The Maui Noah we had going to the Cardinals at 3, and just reading their prospect profiles, it was like these guys aren't even getting remotely close to the same player in terms of quality of prospects. So that's kind of, the thing with each passing draft class, or not with each passing draft class, but in each draft class, you never know what that first tackle off the board is going to be. Sometimes the 3rd tackle off a board in one draft class will be better than every tackle in the next year's class. So, that though. That's just how the draft works, I guess.
What's interesting about this draft, and which kind of like, excuse me, like you said, where it's like really anything can happen before the Lions pick in the first round, is that I think maybe for 2 years in a row now, we've kind of heard that the draft, I don't want to call it a weak draft, but maybe a little bit of a weak draft. Like I think for 2 years running now, that was the theme of in the process leading up to the draft. But what makes this one different than last year's and a bit more unique is that last year you had a quote unquote blue chip pass rusher with Abdul Carter. You had a Travis Hunter, this do it all, plays both sides of the ball, this, that, and the other. You had guys at premium positions that were worthy of top 5, top 10 picks. And I think this year there's like not, you know what I mean? I think
it's Fernando Mendoza.
Right. The players who are viewed as best in the class, Jeremiah Love, Caleb Banks, Caleb Downs, they don't play pass rusher. They don't play corner. You know what I mean? It's less value positions. And I think even like, whatever. People will say like running back has been devalued, but then the Lions, they got Gibbs and Montgomery, so they proved that it's still valuable. I think the best way to look at it is look at the top of the market for the different position groups, and running back, especially linebacker, positions like that they're just paid less, and so inherently they're less valuable in the NFL. And that brings up Sonny Styles, where it's like, well, he tested really well, like he was already projected in the top 10, but he plays linebacker. But is the fact that he plays linebacker going to be actually an advantage in this year's class? Because there's not a really good pass rusher like over him with a pass rusher without flaws. Like there's Reuben Bain, there's David Bailey, but Reuben Bain has short arms. David Bailey has issues against the run, maybe a little bit lighter than most teams would like. So that's what makes this class interesting, is that do you want to draft the positional value, or do you want to draft who you think is the best player? And that will impact who's available for the Lions at 17.
Right. I think this makes the first round highly unpredictable. And to your point, I also think that we will see some of these non-premium positions come off the board earlier, because it's like the opportunity cost is just not as significant as what it is in previous drafts. So, yeah, completely agree. Our picks. If you want to see the full Detroit News mock draft, go check it out, DetroitNews.com. We both took edge rushers, and that was not intentional. We both took offensive linemen last time around. Again, not intentional, although I think what happened is that I started to like a couple of the tackles more, which pushed them up my board, which means that they weren't there for the Lions. So like the guy I gave them last time around was Caleb Lomu, the left tackle from Utah. I gave him to the Rams at 12. It might be a little bit high, but I like him, and so I gave them to him. So it just kind of ended up being the way the cookie crumbled. Monroe Freeling, Maui Noah, Fano, I had all those guys going before them. So I think by the time we both got to the Lions, it seemed like an edge rusher, which is a deeper class. There might not be the talent at the top, but like I feel like, and I also think this was said about last year's class, it's a good year to need an edge rusher in like the second or third round, maybe, or somewhere in the middle of the first. So I think that there's a pretty good chance that whoever is the best player available for the Lions at 17 will either be an edge rusher or a tackle. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but I think that that's kind of just the direction things went in for us this time around.
Even Venga Ione, the Penn State guard, that was who I picked for the Lions in the first mock draft, but he wasn't available this time because not only did the tackles move up, he moved up for us. He was not available in this. I think that's, if the Lions want to walk out of round 1 with an offensive lineman, the scenario that we put forth would not be good for them. It would not lend itself to the best tackles being available. I think Caden Proctor was still on the board when we were picked for the Lions at 17. Blake Miller was on the board, but we did not go with those guys. Like you said, we went edge. Did we want to reveal the edges that we took?
Yeah, I took TJ Parker from Clemson. Not the sexiest pick by any means. He's a run first kind of guy, but I think fits the stylistic profile of the edge rusher that they look for, opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, which is a bigger guy who can kind of crush the pocket a little bit. He had pretty insane production in 2024. I think he had 19 and a half tackles for loss, 11 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, which is just like shout out. Like, I don't even know how you go about replicating that, because he had 0 the following year. So he he came back down to earth this past year. His I think let me look up his stats real quick. But his pressures and his quarterback hurries didn't really come down, just the sacks and the tackles for loss came down a little bit. So stuff to worry about with, he might not have the best speed route or the best speed moves. His hands are lauded in both the run and pass game, which should give him a decent baseline as he looks to improve his pass rushing ability at the next level. But I think overall, I think there's a pretty good chance that if he's sitting there at 17, the Lions say that looks like a Lion right there. So again, might be a little bit high at this point in the draft cycle. It seems like he's kind of more of a fringe first rounder, maybe falling out of the first round guy, but I think he kind of brings a lot of what the Lions look for.
You could say a lot of the same things about who I picked, which was Keldrick Falk, the defensive end out of Auburn. Strikingly similar build to Marcus Davenport, who we know the Lions have tried to make work opposite Aiden Hutchinson for the last 2 years. Falk, like Parker, is a plus run defender at this point. That feels like the floor for them earlier in their careers, that they will be able to be an early down presence on the edge. He's shown a little bit of juice as a pass rusher. He had 7 sacks and 45 pressures in 2024, but similar to Parker, the production kind of fell off. It did fall off a little bit. This past year, he only had 2 sacks, including one in the opener. So he went his final 11 games was only having 1 sack, which is certainly concerning. He admitted, like, he got asked at the combine, what do you need to work on? And he was blunt about it. He was like, pass rush. Like that's if I'm going to be successful at the next level, that's what I have to do. And then I asked him, I was like, when you say pass rush, do you mean like you got to add like tools to your tool belt, a spin move, a cross chop, and like things like you got to learn those? Or are you talking about like you got to like evolve like how you think of like leverage and things like that? And he was like, basically, like, as a power rusher, he was like, of course I'm going to have some finesse moves to me. Every pass rusher is going to have some bit of finesse, some bit of power, but he said, I'm a power rusher and I have to master the power rush moves. So I thought that was interesting. And he's only 20 years old.
Did he recognize you?
No, he did not. At least he didn't say it that he did. Because
did you tell him that you knew him?
No, it was at the podium.
Well, then how would he think to say that he didn't recognize you?
Well, I'm saying he didn't say like, "Oh, you're familiar." Like he didn't say that.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were saying. Never mind. I thought it was like I thought you were saying that like it was somehow came up that he should know you.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, he did not.
Like,
he did not indicate. He did not indicate that he did. That he did or did not. I used to cover him at Auburn when I was there before I got this job. And he's only 20 years old. He won't be 21 until September. Like one of the youngest prospects in the draft, which if you're going to bet on a guy to develop as a pass rusher, you'd want a younger guy because he still has room to grow.
Yep. That's kind of like some of the offensive tackles that I like. It's kind of the same thing where Lomu, Freeling, Lomu has decent starting experience, but just kind of needs to fill out his frame and become more powerful before he catches on to the next level. So, yeah, I think that's all I got. All right, NFLPA report cards. These were not supposed to be out. The NFL filed a grievance against the NFLPA for publishing them and won, which prevented them from outright publishing it on the NFLPA site, but it apparently did not stop them from leaking all the results to ESPN's Kalen Kaler, who is, for my money, one of the best sports journalists working in the NFL right now. So they, overall, they were 9th out of 32 teams, which is neutral from last year. Going to run some of the categories here. They improved on most things. If their grade moved, it was because they improved on most things. The only things that did not improve was head coach. Tough. Went from an A plus to an A. Sorry, Dan Campbell. And then team travel went from B plus to a B. So those are the only 2 grades that moved down. Grades that moved up were treatment of families, B plus up from a B. Food and dining area, a B up from a B minus. Nutritionist and dietitian, an A minus up from a B. Locker room, A up from C plus. That one was big. I mean, we chronicled that throughout the season. wild revamping of the locker room in Allen Park this past offseason. Training staff, B+, up from a B. Weight room, A, up from a B. Believe they renovated that in the last year as well. Strength coaches, A, up from A-. And then team ownership, an A, up from B+. So Sheila Hamp moving on up in the world here.
Yeah, nothing particularly surprising. There was also a couple new categories that were included in Kalen's report that the NFLPA did not publish last year. I don't know if that means that they weren't done or that they're new to this year, but regardless, it was home game field was a B- at Ford Field. Position coaches was an A-. Offensive coordinator was a C-. That is John Morton. Defensive coordinator was a B for Kelvin Shepard. Special teams coordinator Dave Phipp got an A. General manager Brad Holmes had an A-. Some things of note around the league was Drew Petzing in Arizona got a B- from those players over there, and Aaron Glenn got
which is a big upgrade from a C-.
Yeah. Aaron Glenn, former Lions coach, got an A, which I was not anticipating given how the season went. But I guess, the locker room is a fan of Aaron Glenn in New York, which
listen,
there's not a lot. I don't think there's a lot going for Aaron Glenn right now. So I'm glad for him that he has that.
You can be a great place to work at and still not make any money. In the NFL, like winning is like making, well, everybody makes money in the NFL, but in the NFL, it's like winning is like making money in terms of how we like relate it to other businesses. There's plenty of companies out there who have a great boss, but they just not making any money. Those are good places to work. You know what I'm saying?
I think when AG was here, we all knew like we were like, I think the players are gonna like him. Like the players in Detroit really liked him. Like Alex Anzalone was ride or die for Aaron Glenn like the whole time. All the players were, all the defensive players were. So it's not shocking to me that the players like him, but I don't know. I was happy to see that for him, given how bad the first year went.
The C- for Morton is really tough. We didn't not expect this, given the way players talked about him at points this season, but to see a letter grade on it is not great. And ultimately, like we give Dan Campbell a lot of credit for a lot of stuff, but that's his C-. Honestly, like the fact that he made that hire,
sure,
kind of with us feeling from the beginning like it wasn't the best hire. I think that's noteworthy.
That's why I'm not going to fault anybody that's still skeptical about Drew Petzing, because I think for the blind optimism that you had in Dan Campbell making hires because he promoted Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, who I know the defenses had their issues, but I think Aaron Glenn's tenure was successful in Detroit. He had hired back-to-back good coordinators. You had blind faith in him to make the right hire this time, and he didn't. He hired John Morton, and then I think it's still kind of TBD on Kelvin Shepard going into next season. So I don't fault anybody for being still skeptical about Drew Petzing.
Yeah. All right, we're going to close out the show here with everybody's favorite game, Keep 4, Cut 4. I've got a topic. I've got 8 subjects, and Rich has to decide whether he wants to keep those subjects or cut those subjects. And we're going to end up with 4 on each side. Today's topic: spring sporting events. It's March. The spring is in the air. You can kind of feel it whenever. I would say like this is the time where I start like getting excited for spring again, for the summer. You got baseball news, you got spring training, the Super Bowl might be over. Like the time from like the end of the, like whenever the Lions season is done and we're done working, we're done having a routine through the NFL Combine, I'm always a little like depressed. There's just like not much going on. It's cold outside. Don't want to go anywhere. Don't want to do anything. But this, hope springs eternal. And so we're going to do spring sporting events. Just jump right into it. The spring/summer. Some of these bleed into summer a little bit. But first up, we're going to go with the Kentucky Derby.
Kentucky Derby. So to be clear, I'm ranking these on how I would enjoy them.
Yeah, the best. What are the best sports events of the spring?
I'm going to cut the Kentucky Derby.
That is not the right answer, my friend. The part of the reason why I did this is because I know that this is going to be a diabolical list. And I can't wait to put it out into the world. All right, you're cutting the Kentucky Derby. Up next, we have the NBA playoffs.
I'll keep that.
Okay.
It's a good time, though. It is always longer than you think. Like you're like man.
I find that with
like 7 weeks into this.
Yeah, the baseball and football have it figured out perfectly where it's just like you don't want it to end,
Yeah.
Baseball gets through it kind of quickly. Like it's every night, so it's a little bit different. But I think like these NHL and NBA playoff series, like it's kind of like March Madness for me. I love the first round when just stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a game
all
every
the time, every night. Sometimes there's 4 games going on at one time. But I find that like as we get deeper and deeper into the NHL and NBA playoffs, and it starts getting a little bit nicer outside, things like that, my interest starts to tail off a little bit.
I'm keeping the NBA playoffs, but they're probably like 4 out of 4 for me here.
So I'm an idiot because I just realized that I actually put a non-spring sporting event on here, but I'm gonna use it anyways. We're gonna go with the Winter Olympics. Well, I just had Olympics on there, and then I was like, wait, that was a Winter Olympics. It's not really. So we're gonna go late February through mid-June sporting events.
Okay. The Olympics. I'm trying to think of other events that are gonna be here because I like the Olympics, but I'm not sat at my couch for every Olympic event. Like it's the hockey games that are ones that I'll tap into. I don't know if other events that the United States is in the gold medal or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to I'm gonna cut the Olympics.
I already put them in the cut category because I knew you're gonna pretend to be torn about that, but you don't care about the Olympics.
I care I cared about the hockey games.
True. Well, not enough to come out to the bar at 8 a.m. in the morning, but that's.
I watched it from my
story
bed
for another time.
Shout out to
missed out on a generational community moment because he wanted to get an extra hour of sleep. All good.
Mm-hmm.
Up next, Daytona 500.
I should have kept the Olympics, I think, just because I'm not a big NASCAR guy. I'm going to cut the Daytona 500. But now I have 3 keeps left and one cut. I should have kept the Olympics.
Up next, we have the NHL playoffs.
Oh, man. I don't watch hockey. I only watch the gold medal games. I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to cut the NHL playoffs.
Okay. Up next, we have Masters Week.
So I also don't watch hockey. I mean golf, but I've run out of cuts. So Masters is being kept.
We also have opening day of baseball.
I watch baseball. Opening day, I'm fine with keeping. I don't watch baseball every day, but I watch it enough to enjoy it.
And I was trying to find a way to force you to put this in the cut category. I think I rolled out my subjects wrongly. March Madness. You're gonna keep that one. I know that was your favorite, and I was trying to sewer you into not getting it.
Honestly, the only change I would make is I would swap the Olympics and the Masters. So again, this is for me, for what I enjoy.
You don't care about the Kentucky Derby?
Not for me, and that's okay.
What about for America?
It's not for me. I would keep the NBA, the Olympics, opening day in baseball, and March Madness, while cutting the Kentucky Derby, the Masters, the Daytona 500, and the NFL and the NHL playoffs, which I know is a poor list because the Masters, the Kentucky Derby, and the Daytona 500 are things that a lot of people care about. And I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that I don't watch those things.
Just for all the listeners out here who are mad at Rich, allow me to be your haven. I love all those sports, and I would never degrade them in the way that Rich just did. So. All right, that does it for this week's episode of the Gridiron Gang podcast. Thank you to everybody for listening. We will be back with another episode next week. You can find me on Twitter at Nolan Bianchi, Rich at Rich_Silva18. We're going to have so much Lions content coming up. I mean, free agency next week. Starts on Monday. Technically, tampering period starts on Monday. We probably should have gone over that at the beginning of the show. Tampering period starts on Monday. The new league year starts on Wednesday at 4:00, so that's when players can officially sign. And I think we might do a preview podcast on Sunday night for free agency, but we'll see how things go over the next couple of days. I don't want to fully commit to that yet, but we might have another podcast coming before next week. So if not, I think we might save it for like an emergency podcast recording if the Lions sign somebody big or noteworthy. So that plan remains fluid for now, but just check our Twitter feed, check out DetroitNews.com, and rate, review, subscribe. It'll be waiting for you if you do it.
It's noon on Monday is when
Yes.
the negotiating window opens. So you will likely start to hear news at noon on Monday.
Yes. All right. Same time next week. We'll talk to you guys soon.